Okay, so we are now recording. Welcome everyone to our 10-minute lesson. Today we are going to talk about utility demand, and I should say we, but really not me. I'd like to introduce Jim Myers, who is one of my partners in crime in these 10-minute lessons, and he has just a ton of experience in energy and utility industry, and I'll let him fully introduce himself. So Jim, you can take it away.
Thanks, Alana. I won't give too much of an introduction myself, other than I spent my entire career in facilities and utility and energy. The last 22 years of my career as the director of the Penn State Facilities Engineering Institute, where we were really technical advisors primarily to the state of Pennsylvania and their facilities, but also nationwide to GSA, providing help with energy and providing education. So today we've got a brief lesson on utility demand. That's a topic that if you work with utilities, it might seem like second nature to you, and probably is. But for those who don't work with utilities all the time, it can be a very confusing topic, and one that you just kind of ask the question, well, why is this important? So we're going to take just a few minutes and answer those questions. So the first concept that I want to go over is this concept of use versus demand. And use is simply an amount, right? Whereas demand is a rate, the rate at which we are using this commodity or this utility or this energy. And if we think of it, of other utilities, we think of water, and it's measured in gallons or cubic feet. Natural gas in cubic feet, or thousands of cubic feet, which should typically referred to as MCF, or sometimes in therms, which is as a heat measurement in BTUs. Electricity is kilowatt hours. Okay, that's the measure of the amount of electricity you're using. Then, if we look at rates, if we look at the rate at which something is used, it's the use per unit time. So for water, we often see gallons per minute. Pumps are rated, for example, in gallons per minute. You might have water bills that are CCF per month, 100 cubic feet per month in your water bill. Natural gas, your bills are often in MCF or therms per month. It's a monthly bill. But electricity, again, can be a very confusing amount. Electricity, the rate is a kilowatt. And you wouldn't believe how many times I've heard people who are supposed to know about energy call a kilowatt hour a kilowatt, or vice versa. But the easiest way to remember it is that it is a rate. The usage is a kilowatt hour. And so it's a kilowatt hour per unit time. And that unit time is an hour. So it can be remembered also as a kilowatt hour per hour. The hours cancel out, you get a kilowatt. So other electric terms, again, we say the usage is a kilowatt hour. You can also convert that to BTUs. Demand is a kilowatt. Often your bills, and this is getting to the reason why it's important to talk about demand or kilowatts. Your bills are often, and your meters are often looking at 15-minute demand periods. And that demand period, or that rate period, will govern for the entire month of your bill. So for a month, your highest 15-minute demand or rate will be the charge that you will see on your bill for a demand. A third number, which we are not really going to get into, is called load factor. and that's a kilowatt hour. Your kilowatt hour use essentially for an entire billing cycle or a month divided by your demand times the number of hours in a month. But essentially what that is the ratio of your use to your peak demand. So it's always going to be one or less. So that gives you a good measure of what is my average load to my peak load. So the higher that number, the better. In other words, if you had a load factor of 1, that means your load profile would be flat the entire month. You'd be using the exact same amount the entire month. Typically, good load factors for a large facility would be 0.8 or better. So remember, the thing is, in terms of what it is, energy is expressed in kilowatt hours, the amount used, and the rate in kilowatts. So I want to illustrate that a little bit more to begin to talk about more why it's important. If we think of a water utility, water is always a good analogy to electricity. You have a water utility system, a water tower, storage facility with some pipe going to some houses. Now, let's say those people that live in those houses also work in a manufacturing facility. That system that supplied the houses is probably going to be insufficient to provide water to the factory or manufacturing facility. You either have to have a bigger tower or you need another tower with larger pipes, not only to meet the quantity of water that's going to those houses and factory, but also to meet the rate at which it's going. A 2-inch pipe will not work for the manufacturing facility. You need a larger pipe because of the demand. Water actually is easier than electricity. The problem with electricity is the grid has to exactly produce what is being demanded by the customers. Now, there's been a lot of talk, of course, about storage of electricity, and there are storage technologies. However, for the purposes of managing a grid and the quantities of electricity that are used there, storage is really, for all intents and purposes, pretty minuscule in the equation. So this is an actual load profile from a facility that I worked with, and it's over 16 days. You can see here very clearly, each one of these spikes is a day. It happens to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh, there's a Monday that's low. Boy, it's really easy to read these. That was a holiday. It was Labor Day. And so what you see here are these peaks in the day and the lower usages at night. And it's quite pronounced, as you can see. So if you're a utility company or a grid manager, you need to ramp up some kind of capacity to meet the demands. This actually was a university, so the weekends were also low. It was actually a rather small university that I worked with, and so that's why the demand was lower on the weekends. It was not manufacturing that ran 24/7. And then, of course, the holiday. But as a utility company or a grid operator, you really need to be able to meet those demands at all times. And there's a cost to that. Here in the United States, we have what we call transmission operators. And here's a map of all the transmission operators around the country. The one that I live in and know best is called PJM. PJM stands for Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland. It was originally only those 3 states that managed the grid for that territory, but it's actually been a very well-managed system. And over the years, it has grown, as you can see, to include down to Virginia, parts of North Carolina, Ohio, actually jumped some some territory and includes Chicago and Northern Illinois. That's how that grid map looks. And then the next thing I have is just a little representation. This isn't necessarily meant to be exactly correct as far as locations of power plants, but for illustrative purposes, you have various power plants around this system. And as the demand, the load changes, the grid operators have to dispatch power. So in this case, perhaps maybe as the power ramps up, you need to put another plant on the system. As it ramps up further, perhaps you need to increase capacity of some of the plants. And then in the evening, when the capacity or when the demands reduce, again, you either reduce some of the plants or you pull a plant offline. I've made it sound rather simple, but it is actually very complex. So there's costs associated with that, and subsequently or consequently, I should say, you are charged for that demand. Not only are you charged on your bills for your use, but you are charged for the demand. So really kind of the summary of this is why is this important? Well, demand is important for everybody, for reliability of the grid. It's important because it really is a big driver in the cost of electricity in larger facilities. And the third reason is sustainability and efficiency. If in a perfect world, if we could have a completely flat demand, a completely flat rate that everybody was using 24/7, it would require much less resources that could be run much more efficiently in the grid. But that isn't the real world. So there are strategies that we're looking, that everybody is always looking at to reduce demand, both on the supply side and the demand side. So that is the very quick 10 minutes of what is demand and why it's important. Any comments or questions? I did not look at my chat. I was focusing, I don't know if there's any chat questions, but anybody can chime in if they want by voice. There's not that many people here. Other than that, I do want to give a little bit of a plug to our future 10-minute series. Alana will be doing January 7th, Why FMs Have to Be Leaders. I'll be doing some budget development, 10-minute basics on the 14th of January. Alana will be back again on the value of professional development and training. And on January 28th, I'll be giving a little session on how to make presentations to executives from an FM perspective.
Well,
thank you for attending.
Thanks, Jim. That was awesome. I even learned something. Any questions for Jim before we sort of finish up here? If not, we wish you a wonderful, happy, and healthy and safe holiday season. And we look forward to joining us again in January as we continue on with our series. And, you know, if you have ideas for sessions you'd like us to consider for the future, we love hearing topics or things that you'd like to hear about. So please keep that in mind as well. And we'll advertise and remind you after the holidays about our January 7th session. So thanks, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you back in January, happy and healthy. And we're all looking forward to 2021, right?
Absolutely. Hey, Alana.
Yes.
I signed up for the virtual FMP class starting in January.